On Christmas Eve, I dragged gifts into the family cabin, expecting to cook dinner. Then my husband arrived with a date in a sparkly red dress. She looked me over and sweetly asked if I was the nanny. I simply smiled. They had no idea that beneath the snow and silence, I held the keys to everything they thought they had stolen from me. My name is Harper Lewis, and for the last 10 years, I have defined myself by the skylines I helped reshape. As the co-founder and lead project manager of Evergreen Urban Developments, I was used to high-pressure environments. I was used to structural integrity checks, zoning wars, and the kind of stress that makes your hair fall out in clumps. But as I navigated my SUV up the winding, icy switchbacks of the Colorado Rockies, none of that professional armor seemed to fit. I was just a woman trying to make it home for Christmas, desperate to prove that I could balance the ledger between a demanding career and the people I loved. The trunk was packed so tight with gifts that I could barely see out the rear view mirror. I had spent thousands of dollars on presents I hoped would buy me forgiveness for the late nights and missed dinners of the past year. I told myself this time would be different. I told myself that for the next week I would not check my email once. I would just be Harper. Not the boss, not the paycheck, just the wife and stepmother. I pulled into the long gravel driveway of the Lewis family cabin just as the sun was beginning to dip behind the tree line, painting the snow in shades of bruised purple and gray. The cabin was a massive structure of timber and stone, something Daniel's grandfather had built, and Daniel and I had renovated 3 years ago. It looked picture perfect. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney, and the warm glow of fairy lights framed every window. It smelled like the holidays, that crisp mixture of pine needles and wood smoke that usually signaled safety. But something was wrong. I felt it in my gut before my brain processed the visual data. It was a detail that did not fit the schematic. The driveway was full of cars. My in-laws were here. My brother-in-law's truck was here, but Daniel's car was gone. The sleek black sedan, which he treated better than he treated most people, was nowhere to be seen. I killed the engine and sat there for a moment, the silence of the mountains pressing in against the glass. Maybe he ran out for ice. Maybe he was picking up a last-minute gift. I pushed the unease down, grabbed as many bags as I could carry, and crunched my way through the snow to the front door. I did not knock. I lived here. I keyed the code into the lock and shouldered the heavy oak door open, kicking the snow off my boots as I stumbled into the entryway. Merry Christmas, everyone. I hope you're hungry, because I brought enough prime rib to feed an army. I called out, my voice sounding too loud, too cheerful in the cavernous space. I expected noise. I expected the roar of the football game on the TV, the clinking of glasses, the chaotic noise of Daniel's rowdy family. Instead, I walked into a wake. The living room was dead silent. The massive television above the stone fireplace was black. My mother-in-law, Marion, sat in her high-backed armchair, her hands folded primly in her lap. My father-in-law stood by the window, staring out at nothing. And there on the love seat was Lily, my stepdaughter, 19 years old, home from her sophomore year of college, looking at me with an expression I could not decipher. I was not happy. It was not angry. It was just blank. Where is Daniel? I asked, dropping the bags on the floor. The thud echoed in the room. Is everything okay? Has something happened? The air in the room was thick, heavy with unsaid words. It felt less like a holiday gathering and more like a courtroom in the seconds before a verdict is read. Marion looked up at me, her lips pressed into a thin line, but she did not speak. Then the front door opened behind me. A gust of freezing air swirled into the room, followed by the sound of laughter. I turned around, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Daniel walked in. He looked impeccable. He was wearing his velvet Christmas blazer, the deep green one I had bought him last year, his hair styled perfectly. He looked like the face of Evergreen Urban Developments, charming and handsome and completely at ease. He was not alone. Walking in right behind him, clinging to the crook of his arm like an expensive accessory, was a woman. She was young, perhaps 25 or 26. She was wearing a red dress that was entirely inappropriate for the weather, tight and sequined and shimmering under the hallway lights. In one hand, she held a bottle of expensive champagne. In the other, she held Daniel's hand. My brain stalled. I tried to process the geometry of the situation, but the lines did not connect. Daniel looked at the room, his eyes sweeping over his parents, his daughter, and finally landing on me. He did not look surprised to see me. He looked annoyed, like I was a contractor who had shown up on the wrong day. "Hello, everyone," Daniel said, his voice smooth, carrying that practiced charisma he used in boardrooms. He stepped further into the room, pulling the woman in the red dress with him. "I want you all to meet Savannah. She is my +1 for this evening." He said it so casually. +1 as if I were not standing 3 feet away, covered in snow, surrounded by the gifts I had wrapped for his family. Silence stretched out again, painful and sharp. No one moved to introduce me. Marian adjusted her cardigan. Lily looked down at her phone. Savannah stepped forward. She had a beautiful face, polished and bright, with eyes that scanned the room before locking on to me. She looked at my heavy wool coat, my snow-dampened jeans, and my hair, which I had thrown into a messy bun after 6 hours of driving. She smiled. It was a terrifying smile, sweet as sugar and utterly devoid of warmth. "Oh, you must be here to help with the dinner," Savannah said, her voice light and airy. She tilted her head, looking at the bags of gifts and food at my feet. "You arrived so early. Do the children bother you much, or are you just very dedicated? You are the Nanny, right?" Mortal Lily. The room went absolutely still. I felt the blood drain from my face. I looked at Lily. She was 19. She did not need a nanny. She knew exactly who I was. I had paid for her braces. I had taught her how to drive. I had held her when she cried over her first heartbreak. Lily looked up from her phone. She looked at Savannah, then at me, and then she giggled. It was a cruel, sharp sound that cut deeper than any knife. "I am not the nanny," I said, my voice shaking slightly despite my best effort to keep it steady. I straightened my spine, drawing on every ounce of authority I possessed as a businesswoman. "I am Harper. I am Daniel's wife." Savannah blinked, her smile faltering for a fraction of a second. She looked confused, her eyes darting to Daniel. Daniel did not flinch. He let out a sigh, the kind a parent makes when a child is being difficult. He draped his arm around Savannah's bare shoulders, pulling her close. "Ex-wife Harper," Daniel said. His tone was conversational. "We have talked about this. You are making everyone uncomfortable. You are confusing Savannah." I stared at him. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. "What are you talking about, Daniel? We had breakfast together on Tuesday. We are not divorced. We have never even discussed divorce." Marian stood up. Then she walked over to us, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. She placed a hand on my arm, her touch light but cold. "Harper, dear," Marian said, her voice dripping with a fake, pitying sweetness. "We really did not want to upset you on the holiday. We know how emotional you get, but this is Christmas. Everyone deserves to be happy. Even Daniel. Especially Daniel. You really should learn how to let go with some grace." "Let go." I choked out a laugh, bordering on hysterical. "I am his wife. I built half of this company. I paid for the renovation of this house. What is happening right now?" "See." Daniel gestured at me, looking at Savannah. "She gets very dramatic. It is the stress. She is not well." Savannah nodded sympathetically, looking at me like I was a stray dog that had wandered into a fine dining restaurant. "Oh, I understand. Burnout is so real. You poor thing." I looked at Lily, desperate for an ally. "Lily, please tell them. This is insane." Lily stood up. She smoothed down her skirt and walked over to stand next to her father. She did not look at me. She looked at the space just past my ear. "Dad talked to the lawyers." "Harper," Lily said. Her voice was flat, rehearsed. "He explained everything to me. Dad deserves someone who is actually here, someone who is not always checking blueprints or screaming about zoning permits on the phone. He deserves a real partner, not someone who is just existing in the same house." The betrayal hit me so hard, I physically stumbled back a step. This was the girl I had championed when Daniel wanted to cut her allowance. I fought for her. When she wanted to switch majors to art history, I was the one who convinced Daniel to pay for it. I whispered, looking at them. "I worked to build the life you are enjoying. I worked to pay for this cabin, and we appreciate the effort," Harper Daniels said, checking his watch. "But the paperwork is already in motion. The lawyers have everything set up. In fact, they assured me that legally, since the cabin is in a trust now, which you signed off on, if you recall, you are essentially trespassing." I looked around the room. My father-in-law refused to meet my eyes. Marian was beaming at Savannah, admiring her dress. Lily was leaning her head on Daniel's shoulder. They had staged this. They had practiced this. This was not a conversation. It was an ambush. "You are kicking me out," I asked, my voice barely audible on Christmas Eve. "We are just asking you to respect the new family dynamic," Daniel said, reaching for the bottle of champagne in Savannah's hand. "Savannah is moving in after the holidays. It is better if we make a clean break now. You can take your car. We will have your things sent to wherever you decide to land. Everything is arranged legally," he added, a smug smile playing on his lips. "Evergreen is protected. The assets are protected. You really should have read the fine print on those restructuring documents last month. Harper, you were so busy saving that project in Seattle. I guess you just trusted me." He popped the cork on the champagne. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet room. "Cheers to new beginnings," Savannah chirped, holding out a glass. I stood there, still wearing my coat, my hands freezing, my heart shattering into a million jagged pieces. I looked at the man I had married, the man I had built an empire with. I looked at the girl I had raised. I looked at the family I had adopted as my own. They were not just ending our marriage. They were erasing me. They were rewriting history in real time, turning me into the crazy work-obsessed ex-wife and Savannah into the rightful heroine, all before the first glass of champagne was finished. I realized then that there would be no dinner. There would be no opening of gifts. The prime rib in my bag was going to rot just like this marriage. "You will regret this," I said. It was not a scream. It was a statement of fact. "Oh, Harper." Daniel laughed, pouring the golden liquid into a flute. "Do not be melodramatic. It is Christmas. Go find a hotel. Take a bath. Relax. You look like you need it." He turned his back on me. They all did. They turned toward the fireplace, toward the warmth, closing the circle, and leaving me on the outside in the cold entryway. I turned around and walked back out into the snow. The door clicked shut behind me, the sound of a lock sliding into place echoing in the night. It was the sound of my life ending, or so they thought. The silence in the entryway was not peaceful. It was the heavy, suffocating pressure of a vacuum before an explosion. I stood there, my hands still gripping the cold brass handle of the front door, while the warmth of the cabin I had helped pay for spilled out around me, wasted on the winter air. Marian, my mother-in-law, broke the tableau. She walked toward me, not with an apology, but with the bustling, efficient energy of a hostess trying to smooth over a spilled drink. "Harper, really," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, though it carried clearly in the stillness. "There is no need to storm off into the snow like a dramatic teenager. You should stay for dinner for appearances. It is Christmas Eve after all." She paused, smoothing the front of her cashmere sweater. "However, I must be honest with you. We have moved your things out of the master suite. Savannah is staying there with Daniel tonight. We did not think it was appropriate to have a guest sleeping on the sofa during the holidays. I am sure you understand." I stared at her. The master suite, the room where I had handpicked the reclaimed wood for the headboard, the room where I had nursed Daniel through the flu last winter. "You moved my things?" I asked, my voice hollow. "Just to the guest room in the basement," she said brightly, "the one near the boiler. It is quite cozy." I did not answer. I walked past her, my boots leaving wet, muddy prints on the pristine rug, a petty act of vandalism that gave me a tiny spark of satisfaction. I walked into the living room toward the massive stone fireplace. The mantel was decorated with the same garland I had bought 3 years ago. Hanging there were the knit stockings. There was one for Marian, one for Daniel's father, one for Lily, and one for Daniel. But mine was gone. In the spot where Harper had hung for 7 years, there was a new stocking. It was velvet, bright red, and completely unblemished by soot or time. Embroidered across the cuff in glittering gold thread was a single letter S. Severe. They had not just invited her, they had integrated her. They had prepared for her arrival while I was working 80-hour weeks to ensure the company bonuses were paid on time. I felt a hand clamp around my upper arm. It was Daniel. He steered me away from the fireplace, his grip firm, guiding me toward the kitchen, away from the prying eyes of his parents and his new girlfriend. The kitchen was gleaming, smelling of rosemary and roasting meat, the dinner I was supposed to have cooked. Daniel released my arm and reached into the inner pocket of his velvet blazer. He pulled out a thick cream-colored envelope. "Here," he said, sliding it across the granite island toward me. "Take this." "What is it?" I asked, though I knew. I could see the letterhead of our corporate legal firm through the paper. "It is a separation agreement and a draft for the divorce," Daniel said, his tone devoid of any emotion, as if he were discussing a zoning variance. "Sign it. If you sign it now, we can keep this civil. I have already spoken to the board at Evergreen. They are fully behind me. They agree that the company needs a singular vision, and frankly, no recent behavior has made them nervous." My behavior, I snapped, the shock finally giving way to a burning anger. "You mean the fact that I demand we actually follow safety regulations, or that I refuse to use cheap materials to pad the margins?" "I mean your instability," Daniel countered smoothly. "You are overworked. You are emotional. You are paranoid. Look at you, Harper. You are shaking." I looked down at my hands. They were trembling, not from instability, but from rage. "I am not signing anything," I said, pushing the envelope back. "And I am not staying in the basement." "Suit yourself," Daniel said, picking up the envelope and tapping it against his palm. His face hardened, the charming mask slipping just enough to reveal the shark underneath. "But I should warn you, I have put a freeze on the joint credit cards and the company cards just as a precaution. I did not want you doing anything rash in your condition." He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a menacing murmur. "If you want to make a scene, go ahead, but if you walk out that door without signing, do not expect a comfortable Christmas. See how you survive the holidays with nothing." I looked at him, really looked at him. For the first time in months, I saw the arrogance, the weakness he masked with expensive suits, and the utter lack of conscience. "Merry Christmas, Daniel," I said. I turned on my heel and walked out. I did not look at Marion. I did not look at Savannah, who was now holding court on the sofa, laughing at something Lily had said. I walked out the front door into the biting wind and did not look back. The drive down the mountain was a blur of white. The snow had turned into a full-blown blizzard, large flakes rushing at the windshield like hyperspace stars. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned the color of bone. Inside the car it was silent, but inside my head it was a cacophony. Nanny, ex-wife, learned to let go. The windshield wipers slapped back and forth, a metronome counting down the seconds of my old life. I had no plan. I had nowhere to go. My parents were dead. My friends were mostly mutual friends with Daniel, people who drifted toward power and money like moths to a flame. The fuel light pinged on the dashboard. Low fuel, I swore under my breath. In my rush to get to the cabin, I had skipped the last fill-up, thinking I would do it the next day. Now I was running on fumes, in the middle of a storm. I spotted the neon glow of a gas station sign cutting through the swirling snow, about 5 miles down the canyon. I pulled in, the car sliding slightly on the unplowed slush. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the card out of my wallet. I swiped my corporate American Express at the pump. Declined. I stared at the screen. I tried again. Declined. Contact issuer. "Okay," I whispered, my breath plumbing in the freezing air. "Okay, Daniel, you want to play?" I pulled out my personal Visa, the one connected to our joint checking account. Declined. I felt a cold sweat break out on the back of my neck. Despite the freezing temperature, I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. I needed to transfer money from my savings, my personal savings that I had before the marriage. Access denied. Too many failed login attempts. Please contact a branch representative. He had not just frozen the joint accounts. He had flagged my identity. He had locked me out of everything. I stood there in the snow, the wind whipping my hair into my face. holding a piece of useless plastic. I checked my wallet. I had no cash. I rarely carried cash. Wait. I dug into the zippered pocket of my purse. There, crumpled into a ball, was a small wad of bills. It was the cash I had collected from the team at the last job site to buy a gift for the foreman. I had forgotten to deposit it. I counted it with numb fingers. $46. $46. That was my net worth. That was the sum total of my life as a high-powered executive, a wife, and a builder. I went inside and paid for $10 of gas, just enough to get me to the nearest town. I bought a bottle of water and a protein bar. I drove for another 20 minutes until I saw a flickering sign on the side of the highway, the Pinecone Motel. The N in Pine was burnt out, so it read the Pinecone Motel. Beneath it, a red neon sign buzzed and sputtered, vacancy. It was a row of low, dilapidated rooms with peeling paint and dark windows. It was the kind of place people went when they did not want to be found or when they had nowhere else to go. I parked the SUV between a rusted pickup truck and a dumpster. I went into the office, a glass box that smelled of stale coffee and bleach. The night manager, a man with a gray beard and suspicious eyes, looked at me. $35 a night, he grunted. Cash only for the locals. I put my remaining $30 odd on the counter. That is all I have. He looked at the money and at my coat, which probably cost more than his car, and shrugged. He slid a key across the counter. It was attached to a green plastic diamond. Room 4, checkout, is at 11:00. No loud noise. Room 4 was freezing. The heater rattled and coughed dust when I turned it on, smelling of burnt hair. The carpet was a shade of brown that suggested it had once been beige but had given up decades ago. There was a stain on the wallpaper that looked like a map of a country that did not exist. I sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress sagged in the middle, groaning under my weight. I kept my coat on. I took out my phone. The signal was weak, but the notifications started flooding in, vibrating against my palm like a frantic heartbeat. Ping. Email from Evergreen HR. Subject: notice of administrative leave. Dear Harper, effectively immediately, you are placed on administrative leave pending an internal investigation into allegations of erratic conduct and potential financial mismanagement. Your access to company servers has been suspended. King email from Daniel's lawyer. Subject: urgent non-disclosure agreement attached. Please find a standard NDA regarding company trade secrets. Please sign immediately to avoid potential litigation regarding intellectual property. King. A text message. My heart jumped. Maybe it was Daniel apologizing. Maybe it was a mistake. It was from Lily. I opened it, my thumb hovering over the screen. Mom, please don't make this hard for Dad. I am going to stay with him and Savannah. They are actually listening to me. Not like you. I need a normal family. Please just let us be happy. The phone slipped from my hand and landed on the thin, scratchy bedspread. A normal family. I looked around the room. The flickering light from the vacancy sign outside cast a rhythmic red pulse across the wall. Buzz dark. From the room next door, I could hear voices. A TV was playing a Christmas movie. I heard a child laugh, followed by the sound of a bottle opening and a man's deep booming chuckle. Merry Christmas, babe, a muffled voice said through the thin drywall. I pulled my knees up to my chest and wrapped my arms around them. I was the COO of a multi-million-dollar company. I was a respected architect. I was a wife. I was a mother figure. And now I was a woman in a $35 motel room with $6 in her pocket, listening to strangers celebrate the holiday while my family toasted to my eraser. I waited for the tears. I waited for the sobbing, the grief, the breakdown. I squeezed my eyes shut, expecting the hot sting of salt, but nothing came. My eyes were dry. My chest, which had felt like it was being crushed by a vice all evening, suddenly felt light, hollow but light. The sadness was there, certainly, but as I sat in the dark, watching the red neon light slash across the room like a metronome, I felt something else stirring beneath the wreckage. It was cold. It was sharp. It was the same feeling I got when I looked at a building that was structurally unsound and knew exactly where to place the dynamite to bring it down safely. They thought they had taken everything. They thought they had stripped me of my resources, my money, my home. They thought that by taking away my title and my credit cards, they had rendered me powerless. But they had made a critical error. They forgot who had built the systems they were now using to lock me out. They forgot who had designed the foundation they were standing on. I reached for my phone again. I did not reply to Lily. I did not reply to the lawyers. I turned the phone off and let the darkness take the room. Let them have their champagne. Let them have their prime rib and their warm fire. Let them sleep soundly in the beds I had paid for. Tomorrow I would not be the victim they expected to find shivering in the snow. Tomorrow I will be the architect of their collapse. I laid back on the lumpy pillow, staring at the ceiling, and for the first time all night, my pulse steadied. The tears never came. The ice had set in. The structural integrity of a building is rarely about the things you can see. It is never about the paint, the crown molding, or the expensive chandeliers that dangle in the foyer. It is about the things buried deep in the dirt. It is about the rebar, the concrete footings, the load-bearing beams that groan in the silence of the night, holding up thousands of pounds of pressure without anyone ever saying thank you, lying on the lumpy mattress of room 4 in the Pico Motel, staring at a water stain on the ceiling that looked suspiciously like a weeping face. I realized that I had spent my entire life being the rebar. The darkness of the room was heavy, smelling of stale cigarette smoke and industrial cleaner, but it was a familiar kind of weight. It felt like the crushing pressure of my childhood in a small Rust Belt town in rural Pennsylvania. I closed my eyes and I was back there. I was 10 years old, sitting at the kitchen table, balancing my mother's checkbook because she said the numbers gave her a migraine. I was the responsible one, the serious one, the one who did not need to be told to do her homework. Then there was my brother, Toby. Toby was the golden boy. He was charming, reckless, and perpetually in need of saving. He was the paint. I was the drywall. I remember the day I came home from school waving a letter from the university. I had won a partial scholarship. It was my ticket out. It was the first brick in the foundation of the life I wanted to build for myself. I had saved $3,000 from waiting tables at the local diner to cover the rest of the tuition and my dorm fees. It was money I had hidden in a hollowed-out biology textbook. But when I went to get it, the book was empty. I remembered the kitchen scene with a clarity that made my stomach turn. My mother was frying onions, refusing to look at me. Toby got into some trouble. Harper, she had said, her voice tight. He tried to start that little business with his friends, and it went sideways. He owed people money. Bad people. That was my tuition. I whispered, feeling the floor drop out from under me. That was my life. My mother finally turned around. Her eyes were not apologetic. They resigned. You are strong, Harper. You always figure it out. You will find another way, Toby. He is not like you. He would break you. You are built to carry things. You are built to carry things. That sentence became the blueprint of my existence. I did not cry then, just like I was not crying now. I just went to work. I took a gap year. I worked 3 jobs. I saved every penny again, brick by brick, dollar by dollar. When I finally left for Seattle to study sustainable architecture, my family did not throw me a party. They called me selfish for abandoning them. They said I was getting above my raising, but I went anyway. I told myself I was building something new, something that was mine, something that could not be rated to pay for someone else's mistakes. I was wrong. I was just looking for a new construction site where I could pour myself into the foundation. And then I met Daniel. It was a networking mixer for green technology startups in a refurbished warehouse in downtown Seattle. The room was full of dreamers and tech bros drinking craft beer, talking about saving the planet while wearing $300 sneakers. I was standing in the corner analyzing the exposed ductwork of the ceiling, thinking about how inefficient the heating system was. Then he appeared, Daniel Lewis. He was vibrant. He was kinetic energy in a navy suit. He was talking to a group of investors, his hands moving, his eyes bright, spinning a story about urban renewal that sounded like poetry. He had the vision. He had charisma. But as I listened, I realized he had absolutely no idea how to actually build what he was selling. He was describing a cantilevered garden system that defied the laws of physics. I walked up to him, fold, young and stupid, and told him his garden would collapse within 6 months due to soil erosion and weight distribution. The investors laughed. I expected Daniel to be angry. Instead, he looked at me with a wonder that I mistook for love. "You are brilliant," he had said, ignoring everyone else in the room. He looked at me like I was a rare artifact he had just discovered. "You are beautiful in that smart, terrifying way. I need you. I have all these ideas, Harper, but I don't know how to make them stand up. I need a partner. I need a partner." God, how I fell for that. For the girl from Pennsylvania, who had always been the invisible workhorse, being called brilliant and beautiful by a man like Daniel was a drug. He made me feel seen. He validated the grind. He made the weight I carried feel like a noble purpose rather than a burden. We founded Evergreen Urban Developments 6 months later. The Division of Labor was established on day one. Though we never wrote it down, Daniel was the face. He did the pitch meetings. He went to the charity galas. He did the interviews with the business journals. He was the one who shook hands and charmed zoning boards. I was the engine. I was the one up at 4 in the morning reviewing the structural engineering reports. I was the one fighting with contractors who tried to swap out steel grades to save money. I was the one calculating the load limits, the wind shear, the thermal bridging. I did the boring work, the invisible work, the work that kept the buildings from killing people. I lay in the motel bed and thought about the Portland Riverfront project. It was supposed to be our big break. Daniel, in his eagerness to land the deal, had bid on a plot of land without consulting me first. He paid 20% over market value, convinced the location would sell itself. He was wrong. The soil was unstable. The remediation costs were triple what he had estimated. The bank threatened to pull our financing. We were weeks away from bankruptcy. Evergreen was going to die in the cradle. Daniel had panicked. He went into a depression, locking himself in our apartment, drinking scotch and staring at the wall. "I ruined it," he had moaned. "I am a failure." So I did what I was trained to do. I carried him. I sold my personal stock portfolio, the one I had started building during my gap year. I refinanced the small condo I had bought before we were married. I took every cent of equity I had and poured it into the hole in the ground in Portland. I moved to a trailer on the construction site for 3 months. I fired the incompetent project manager and ran the site myself. I walked the girders in the rain. I renegotiated supply contracts in muddy boots. I barely slept. I ate vending machine food. I aged 5 years and 90 days, but I saved it. We finished on time. The building was a masterpiece of sustainable design. It won awards. It launched us into the stratosphere. I remembered the morning the article came out in the Pacific Northwest Business Journal. Daniel and I were sitting at breakfast. He was beaming, reading the headline aloud. The visionary, how Daniel Lewis's reshaping the skyline. I waited for my name. I waited for the acknowledgement of the nights I spent shivering in a trailer or the fact that it was my money that kept the lights on. I read the article. My name appeared once in the second-to-last paragraph. Supported by a dedicated team. Supported by a dedicated team. Daniel had looked at me then, sensing my quietness. He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I know they focused on me, babe, but we know the truth. You are the secret weapon. Besides, does it matter whose name is on the marquee? As long as the company is strong, as long as we are building our future, we are a team." I had said, repeating his favorite mantra, "It does not matter." I had lied to myself. I told myself that his success was my success. I told myself that being the supportive wife, the silent partner, and the sturdy foundation was enough. I thought I was being noble, but lying there in the dark, watching the red neon light slash across the peeling wallpaper, I realized the truth. I had not been noble. I had been complicit in my own erasure, from my mother taking my tuition money to Daniel taking the credit for my work. The pattern was a straight, unbroken line. I had spent my life pouring concrete for other people to stand on. I had made myself essential, but I had also made myself invisible. I had assumed that because I was bearing the weight, I was indispensable. I was wrong to them. The foundation is not something you respect. It is just something you bury. And tonight, they had decided they did not need the old foundation anymore. They wanted to build something new, something flashy and cheap with Savannah, and they thought they could just demolish me to make room. My phone buzzed again on the nightstand, vibrating against the cheap laminate wood. It was probably another notification from the bank or another email from the lawyers Daniel had bought with the money I earned. I did not reach for it. Instead, I stared at the ceiling and thought about structural failure. When you remove a load-bearing wall without installing a temporary support, the house does not always collapse immediately. Sometimes it takes time. The stress fractures appear in the drywall first, then the door frames start to stick, then the floors begin to slope. It is a slow, creeping destruction. Daniel thought he had kicked me out. He thought he had cut me off. He thought the house was still standing because the roof was still on and the lights were still working. He did not understand architecture. He did not understand that he had just taken a sledgehammer to the only thing holding his entire life up. I turned over on the bed, pulling the thin, scratchy blanket up to my chin. The coldness inside me was no longer fear. It was a calculation. I was done being the foundation. If they wanted to tear me down, they were going to learn a very hard lesson about physics. When the foundation goes, everything above it comes down with it. Okay, Daniel, I whispered to the empty smelling room. You want to be a visionary? Let us see how well you can see in the dark. I closed my eyes, but I did not sleep. I began to draft a new plan in my head. It was not a blueprint for a building. It was a demolition schedule. The bedside lamp in room 4 cast a sickly yellow light across the stained duvet, but I was not looking at the room anymore. I was looking at the black rubberized brick of a laptop sitting on my knees. It was a Panasonic Toughbook, a relic from my days in the field. It was heavy, ugly, and encased in magnesium alloy that could survive a drop from a 3-story scaffolding. Daniel had begged me to get rid of it years ago. He said it embarrassed him in meetings, that it looked like military surplus instead of executive hardware. I had bought a sleek silver tablet to appease him, but I had kept the Toughbook. I kept it because it had an Ethernet port, a battery that lasted 20 hours, and most importantly, it was not registered on the current company asset list. Daniel thought he had locked me out. He had frozen my bank accounts. He had revoked my credentials for the cloud server. He had told to flag my user ID. But Daniel was a man who looked at the facade of a building and forgot to check the basement. I booted up the machine. The fan whirred to life with a sound like a jet engine taking off. I bypassed the standard login screen and brought up the command line. My heart was beating a slow, steady rhythm against my ribs. It was the rhythm of a demolition expert checking the wiring one last time. Evergreen Urban Developments used a VPN for remote access. When we set up the server architecture 5 years ago, Daniel had complained that the two-factor authentication was too annoying. He hated waiting for the code on his phone. He hated remembering complex passwords. Just make me a master key, Harper. He had wed one night over wine, something that bypasses the token just in case hackers lock us out or something. It was a security risk. It was against every protocol I had written, but I was his wife, and I wanted to make his life easier. So I created a ghost key. It was a hard-coded administrative backdoor that bypassed the authentication server and went straight to the route directory. I stared at the blinking cursor. I had not used the ghost key in 3 years. If the new IT director had done his job properly, he would have patched this hole during the last audit. If Daniel was as smart as he thought he was, he would have ordered a full system scrub. I typed in the string. It was a combination of things Daniel claimed to love but never actually remembered. Form follows function, the architectural quote he used in every speech but never understood. 45 north, the latitude coordinate of our very first project, the one that made us. 0814 August 14th, Lily's birthday. I hit enter. The screen went black for a terrifying second. Then a line of green text scrolled down. Access granted. Welcome admin 01. I let out a breath I did not know I was holding. I was not just in the lobby. I was in the vault. I did not waste time looking at my email or the personnel files. I went straight for the financial server. I pulled up the raw data directories. Bypassing the sanitized dashboards Daniel showed the board members. I started digging. The first thing I looked for was the discrepancy in the quarterly operating costs. I had noticed it months ago, a slow bleed in the consulting and miscellaneous budget, but Daniel had waved it off as inflation and supply chain issues. I queried the database for all outgoing transfers over $5,000 in the last 6 months. The screen is filled with data. There was a folder buried deep in the accounting subdirectory, labeled Project Center. My stomach twisted. It sounded so innocent. It sounded like a charity drive or a holiday bonus fund. I opened it. It was not a charity drive. Project Center was a ledger of systematic embezzlement. I traced the wire transfers. Every month on the 15th, a sum ranging from $10,000 to $15,000 was wired to an entity called Red Ribbon Interiors LLC, registered in Nevada. I opened a second window and ran a search on the Nevada Business Registry. It was public record if you knew where to look. Red Ribbon Interiors LLC, Principal Agent Savannah Brooks. I felt a cold flash of heat run up my neck. I went back to the ledger and cross-referenced the dates of the transfers with the expense reports attached to them. October 4th, $12,000 for interior design consultation lobby renovation. On October 4th, I remembered Daniel telling me he was going to a conference in San Francisco. I checked Savannah's Instagram, which I had archived in my mind earlier. On October 4th, she had posted a photo of herself at a spa in Upper Valley holding a glass of wine. The caption read, "Work trips aren't so bad when the boss spoils you." November 12th, $8,000 for textile sourcing. Credit card records linked to the corporate account showed a charge for exactly $8,000 at a diamond jeweler in downtown Denver. On the same day, December 1st, $25,000 labeled as retainer fee. I traced the routing number. It went directly to a title company. It was a down payment on a luxury condo in the Pearl District. I sat back against the headboard, the plastic casing of the laptop digging into my legs. He was not just cheating on me. He was funding his affair, her lifestyle, and their future love nest with the company's money. He was buying her jewelry with the profits from the projects I had bled to build. But as I scrolled deeper, I realized Project Center was just the tip of the iceberg. It was a flashy distraction. The real rot was in the foundation. I found a second folder encrypted, but accessible with the ghost key. It was labeled Snowline Holdings. I opened the incorporation documents. Snowline Holdings was a holding company formed 18 months ago. The signatories were Daniel Lewis and Marion Lewis. I began to compare the asset lists of Evergreen and Snowline. It was a shell game, a sophisticated, illegal shell game. Over the last year, Daniel had been quietly transferring Evergreen's most valuable assets, the debt-free properties, the completed commercial units, the land rights over to Snowline Holdings. The transfer prices were listed as $1 or other nominal amounts cited as internal restructuring. He was stripping the meat off the bone. He was moving everything of value into a company that I had no ownership of, a company that belonged to him and his mother. Meanwhile, he was leaving Evergreen, the company where I held 40% of the shares and served as COO, saddled with all the debt, the pending lawsuits, and the high-risk loans. He was not just kicking me out. He was planning to bankrupt Evergreen. He was going to leave me with a worthless shell company and millions of dollars in liability while he and his mother walked away with the clean assets under a new name. "You son of a bitch," I whispered. The anger was gone now, replaced by a cold, sharp focus. Then I saw the file that made my blood freeze. It was a PDF labeled Subcollateral Loan Agreements Signed. I opened it. It was a loan document from a private equity firm, a high-interest bridge loan for $3 million taken out against Evergreen's future revenue. I scrolled to the bottom of the page. There above the line, marked Chief Operating Officer, was my signature. It was my signature, but I had never seen this document in my life. I zoomed in. I recognized the loop of the H and the sharp strike of the L. I knew exactly where it came from. It was a digital copy of my signature from the deed to our cabin, the one he had kicked me out of 3 hours ago. He had photoshopped my signature onto a $3 million loan application. He had committed forgery. He had committed bank fraud. And by submitting it, he had made me personally liable for a debt I did not know existed. I closed my eyes for a second, letting the reality wash over me. This was prison time. This was not just a messy divorce. This was a federal crime. I had one more search to run. I remembered the conversation in the outline, Daniel mentioning he had handled Victor Hale. Victor was a rival developer, a shark in the Seattle market. He had been our main competition for the riverfront bid. I searched Daniel's email archive for Hale. I found a thread from 6 months ago between Daniel and a private contractor. Subject: the Seattle issue body. The zoning inspector needs a reason to fail Hale's environmental impact study. I don't care what it costs. Find a violation or plant one. I want him out of the bidding by Monday. Put the fee under landscape maintenance. 2 days later, Victor Hale's project had been shut down for a mysterious chemical leak that was never fully explained. Evergreen won the bid by default. I sat there in the dark motel room, the only sound the hum of the laptop fan and the distant wail of a siren on the highway. Daniel was not just a cheater. He was a criminal. He had bribed officials. He had forged documents. He had embezzled funds. He had defrauded investors. He had built a criminal empire on my back, assuming that I was too busy working, too busy being the good wife, too busy being the structure to notice that the termites were eating the house from the inside out. He thought I was weak. He thought I was the nanny. He thought I was the tragic ex-wife who would sign a settlement and fade away. I reached into my bag and pulled out a portable hard drive, another relic of my field days. I plugged it into the USB port. I created a new folder on the drive. I did not name it Evidence. I named it Winter Collapse. I began to download everything: the Project Center ledger, the Snowline Holdings asset transfers, the forged loan documents, the emails about Victor Hale, the receipts from the jewelry store, the invoices for Savannah's apartment. The progress bar crawled across the screen. 10%, 30%, 50%. I watched the blue line move, and for the first time that night, I smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a demolition expert who had just realized that the building was rigged with explosives, and the detonator was sitting right in her lap. Daniel Lewis had spent 10 years using me as his foundation. He had forgotten that the foundation is the only part of the building that knows where all the bodies are buried. Download complete. I ejected the drive and held it in my hand. It was small, cold, and metal. It weighed less than a deck of cards, but it was heavy enough to crush a man. I closed the laptop. The room went dark again. I had no money. I had no home. I had no job. But I had the ghost key, and I had a bomb. Tomorrow I will go shopping for an ally. The hard drive in my pocket felt like a radioactive isotope. It was small, cold, and capable of leveling a city block. But as I sat on the edge of the motel bed staring at my reflection in the cracked mirror, I realized a painful truth. Information is not power. Information is just ammunition. To fire a bullet, you need a gun. And right now, I did not even have a slingshot. I had $46. I had a car running on fumes. I had a husband who had already bought the judge, the jury, and the press. If I walked into a police station now, Daniel would have his lawyers there within 10 minutes, painting me as the hysterical bipolar ex-wife who forged documents to frame him. He would spin the narrative before I even opened my mouth. I needed an ally, not a friend. Friends offer tissues and sympathy. I needed a weapon. I needed someone who had money, power, and a grudge deep enough to bury Daniel Lewis. I scrolled through my mental Rolodex of the Pacific Northwest development scene. I bypassed the banks. They were risk-averse. I bypassed our mutual acquaintances. They were fair-weather sycophants. Then I stopped on a name: Victor Hale. Victor was a legend in Seattle real estate. He was an old-school billionaire who believed in sustainable building before it was a marketing buzzword. He was also the man Daniel had humiliated 6 months ago. We had beaten Hale Properties for the Willow Riverfront project, a deal worth $200 million, because Daniel had miraculously produced a zoning violation against Victor's proposal. At the time, Daniel had laughed about it over scotch. The old dinosaur didn't see it coming, he had bragged. I picked up my phone. My hands were steady now. The ice inside me had solidified. I dialed the main line for Hale Properties. It was a long shot. It was Christmas Day. But men like Victor Hale did not take holidays. Hale Properties, Executive Office. A crisp voice answered after 2 rings. "This is Harper Lewis," I said. My voice was low, stripped of any polite tremors. "I need to speak to Victor." "Mr. Hale is not taking calls," the assistant said, her tone dismissing me instantly. "And if this is Mrs. Lewis from Evergreen, please direct your inquiries to our legal department regarding the Riverfront appeal. Tell him I am not calling from Evergreen." I cut in. "Tell him I am calling from a motel room because my husband just kicked me out. And tell him I know exactly how Daniel planted the chemical leak evidence that killed his bid on the riverfront. Tell him I had the emails." There was silence on the other end of the line. It lasted for 10 long seconds. "Hold, please." The hold music was classical violins. It played for exactly 30 seconds before the line clicked. The voice that spoke next was not crisp. It was deep, growly, and sounded like tectonic plates shifting. "Harper Lewis," Victor Hale said, "you have exactly 1 minute to explain why you are confessing to a felony on a recorded line." "Because I am not the one who committed it," I said, "and because 3 hours ago my husband introduced his mistress to his family as his +1 and asked me if I was the nanny. I am done. Victor, I have a hard drive. It has everything. The bribes, the shell companies, the bank fraud, and the specific instructions on how he screwed you out of Willamette." Victor made a sound that might have been a grunt or a chuckle. "Why bring this to me? Why not the FBI? The FBI takes months. They build cases. They follow procedure." I said, "I do not want an investigation. Victor, I want an execution. I want him to lose everything before he even realizes the war has started. And I know you have the resources to move faster than the government. Where are you?" "I am in a roadside motel off I-7, but I can be in Denver in 2 hours." "The Brown Palace Hotel," Victor said. "The Ship Tavern be there at 7, and Harper, do not waste my time." The line went dead. The Brown Palace was a monument to Gilded Age luxury, all Italian Renaissance architecture, stained glass, and an atrium that soared 8 stories high. The air smelled of expensive perfume and old money. I walked into the lobby wearing the same jeans and wool coat I had worn to the cabin. I had tried to clean the mud off my boots in the motel's sink, but I still looked like a refugee from a snowstorm. Guests in fur coats and tailored suits glanced at me and looked away. Assuming I was lost or delivering something, I walked straight into the Ship Tavern. It was a dark, clubby space with maritime decor and leather booths. Victor Hale was sitting in a corner booth. He was in his 60s with a shock of silver hair and eyes that were as sharp as cut glass. He was wearing a suit that probably cost more than my first car. He was reading a newspaper, but he saw me the moment I stepped through the door. He did not stand up. He just watched me approach. I slid into the booth opposite him. I did not apologize for my appearance. I did not offer a handshake. I placed the black Panasonic Tough book on the table between us. "You look like hell," Victor said. It was not an insult. It was an observation. "Hell is where I spent the night," I replied. "Let's get to business." I opened the laptop. I did not need the ghost key this time. I had already moved the relevant files to a desktop folder I had named the Hale packet. I turned the screen toward him. "This is an email from Daniel to the private investigator he hired," I said, pointing to the screen. "Dated May 12th, he authorizes a payment of $15,000 to a consultant at the city zoning office. 2 days later, your site was flagged for groundwater contamination." Victor put on a pair of reading glasses. He leaned in, his eyes scanning the text. His expression remained unreadable, but the muscles in his jaw tightened. "Keep reading," I said. "The next one is an internal memo to his mother. He calls you a senile old fool who believes in green ethics over profit. He says beating you is like stealing candy from a baby who thinks the world plays fair." Victor stopped. He looked up at me over the rim of his glasses. The temperature in the booth seemed to drop 10. "He said that," Victor asked, his voice very quiet. "He also said he planned to buy your company for pennies on the dollar once he leveraged the riverfront profits to drive your stock price down." I added, "He has a whole file on it." Project Vulture. Victor closed the laptop. He took off his glasses and folded them deliberately. He signaled the waiter, who appeared instantly. "A Coca-Cola," Victor said. and water for the lady. Water is fine, I said. I have not slept in 30 hours. Alcohol would knock me out. Victor waited until the waiter left before he spoke again. He leaned back, studying me with a predator's gaze. So he said, "You have the smoking gun. You have the motive. What is the ask, Harper? You did not drive through a blizzard just to give me a Christmas present." "I want him destroyed," I said. The words came out flat, simple. I do not mean I want him sued. I want him erased. I want him to lose the company, the houses, the reputation, and the girl. I want him to stand in a courtroom and realize he is going to prison for a very long time. Revenge is expensive, Victor noted. Lawyers like the ones we would need charge $1,000 an hour. Forensic accountants are not cheap, and a war like this gets messy. I have no money, I admitted. He froze my accounts. He forged my signature on a $3 million loan. I am technically destitute. I know, Victor said. I ran a credit check on you while I was waiting. Your credit score has dropped 200 points since yesterday morning. He is thorough. He is thorough. I agreed. But he is arrogant. He thinks he won. I will fund it, Victor said. He said it as easily as if he were buying a sandwich. I will provide the legal team, my personal team, led by Elise Ramirez. She is a shark. I will pay for the forensic audit. I will cover your living expenses. I nodded, feeling a wave of relief so strong it almost made me dizzy. Thank you. But Victor held up his hand. I have conditions. Name them. If we do this, we do not stop halfway. I know how these things go. He will come crawling back. He will cry. He will use the daughter against you. He will appeal to your history, Victor said, his eyes locking onto mine. If I put my money and my name on the line, I need to know that you are not going to get soft. I need to know that you are willing to pull the trigger when he is on his knees. I thought of Lily laughing as Savannah called me the nanny. I thought of the stocking with the S on the fireplace. I thought of the forged signature that could send me to jail. I will not get soft, I said. I want the company to survive. Victor, that is my condition. There are 200 employees at Evergreen, engineers, architects, admins. They are good people. They did not do this. I want to save the company, and I want to save their jobs. We cut out the cancer, but we saved the patient. Victor smiled. It was a thin, dry smile. You are sentimental about the labor force. It is a weakness. It is structural integrity. I corrected him. You cannot build a legacy on a graveyard. If we burn the company down, we are no better than him. I want to take Evergreen, strip Daniel out of it, and rebuild it the right way, and I want to run it. Victor raised an eyebrow. You want to run it after all this. I built it, I said fiercely. I designed the systems. I hired the people. It is my company. I am not trading one master for another. Victor, I am not handing Evergreen to you as a prize. If we win, I keep operational control. You make your investment back with interest, and you get the satisfaction of watching Daniel burn while I run the show. Victor stared at me for a long moment. He looked at the cheap coat, the tired eyes, and the defiant set of my jaw. Then he laughed. It was a genuine sound this time. You are not the CEO I thought you were, he said. I always thought you were just the woman standing behind the man. I was the woman holding the man up, I said, and now I am stepping away. The waiter arrived with our drinks. A crystal glass of water for me, a bottle of Coca-Cola for the billionaire. Victor raised his glass. To the riverfront, he said. I raised my water to the renovation. We clink-kicked glasses. The sound was sharp and clear. One more thing, Victor said, taking a sip of his soda. I have a vacant apartment in the city. It is fully furnished. Use it. You cannot fight a war from a motel room that charges by the hour. Elise will meet you there tomorrow morning at 8. Bring the hard drive. Thank you, I said again. Don't thank me, Victor said, his face hardening again. Just make sure that when we are done, there is nothing left of Daniel Lewis but a cautionary tale. I looked down at the laptop. Don't worry, Victor. I have the blueprints for his destruction right here. We just need to plant the charges. I took a sip of water. It was cold and clean. It tasted like a beginning. The alliance was formed. The nanny and the dinosaur were going hunting. Victor Hale's apartment in downtown Denver was a fortress of glass and steel, perched on the 42nd floor. It was cold, minimalist, and silent, the exact opposite of the chaotic warmth of the cabin I had been exiled from. But right now, the cold was necessary. The cold kept me awake. I was sitting at a dining table that probably cost more than my college tuition, staring at a woman who terrified me almost as much as she impressed me. Elise Ramirez was Victor's lead counsel. She was small, sharp-featured, and moved with the precise lethality of a scalpel. She had been reviewing the winter collapse files for 6 hours straight, drinking black coffee and occasionally making a noncommittal humming sound. "You thought this was about money," Elise said, finally breaking the silence. She did not look up from her tablet. "It is about money," I said, rubbing my temples. "He embezzled millions. He committed bank fraud." "No," Elise said. She slid the tablet across the polished mahogany surface toward me. "The money is just the vehicle. The objective was total delegitimization. He was not just planning to steal the company, Harper. He was planning to have you committed or at least legally declared incompetent." I stared at her. Look at the folder labeled Medical Chorus." I touched the screen. It opened a thread of emails dating back 11 months. My breath hitched in my throat when I saw the recipient's name. Dr. Julian Aris. Dr. Aris was our marriage counselor. He was the man I had cried in front of for 2 years. He was the man who had told me that my stress was natural, that I needed to find boundaries, that I was caring too much. I trusted him. I began to read the first email from Daniel to Dr. Aris, dated nearly a year ago. Subject: concerns about Harper body. "Hi, Julian. I am writing this confidentially. I'm getting really worried about Harper. She is not sleeping. She's becoming paranoid about the staff at the company. She claims people are hiding files from her. Last night, she was pacing the hallway talking to herself. I just want to put this on your radar. I think she's losing her grip on reality." My hands started to shake. I never paced the hallways. I was looking for the files he hid. "He told me I lost them." "Keep reading," Elise said, her voice devoid of sympathy. "It gets worse." I scrolled down. There were dozens of them. A systematic log of lies. March 3rd. "She is aggressive today, screaming about the budget. I'm scared for her safety." On March 3rd, I had calmly asked why the concrete supplier was overcharging us by 15%. June 10th. "She is forgetting things. I think it is early onset dementia or a breakdown. She forgot we had dinner plans." He never told me about dinner plans. He had changed the calendar entry on his phone, and not mine. Then I saw the reply from Dr. Aries. "Dr. Aries. Daniel, thank you for documenting this. In our next session, I will steer the conversation toward mood stabilization. If this continues, we may need to discuss psychiatric intervention. I have noted potential for explosive behavior and paranoid ideation in her official file." "He bought the therapist," I whispered, feeling sick. Daniel played the concerned husband, and Aris wrote it all down. They were building a medical history of insanity. "Exactly," Elise said, taking a sip of coffee. "If you had tried to fight him on the fraud without this evidence, Daniel would have pulled out these records. He would have told the judge my wife is having a breakdown. She is hallucinating crimes, and he would have had a licensed professional back him up." I felt the room spin. It was not just greed. It was a dismantling of my mind. It was gaslighting on an industrial scale. "There is more." Elise said the narrative was not just for the doctor. It was for the house. She opened another file. These were text message logs recovered from Daniel's company cloud backup, the one he thought was private because he had named the folder Fantasy Football. Elise pointed to a conversation between Daniel and Marion, his mother. "Marion, she looked terrible at dinner. So manic. Are you sure she is safe around the business?" "Daniel, I am trying." "Mom, it is the stress. She hallucinates problems. I just have to protect the family from her outbursts." "Marion, you are a saint." "Daniel, most men would have left her. She's becoming impossible. Maybe she needs a facility." "They were talking about locking me up," I said, my voice trembling with rage. Marion smiled at me every Sunday. She ate my cooking, and she was texting him about putting me in a facility. Marion is an accomplice, Elise said flatly. But she is not the one that hurts you. This is the one that hurts. Elise swiped the screen one more time. Conversation. Daniel and Lily. I froze. No, I said instinctively. Leave Lily out of this. She is a kid. She is 19. She's an adult. Elise corrected. And she is a witness. Read it. I looked at the screen. The timestamps were from 2 weeks ago. Daniel. Hey kiddo, when the lawyers come to talk to us about the separation, remember what we discussed. Mom has been violent. Lily, violent dad. She has never hit anyone. Daniel, remember the night she tore up the blueprints in the kitchen? She was screaming. She threw things. Lily, she didn't throw things. She just crumbled the paper and cried because the contractor messed up the foundation. She was sad, not scary. Daniel, that is not how it looked to me. And that is not how it needs to look to the judge if you want to keep your tuition checks coming. She was throwing things. Lily, she was out of control. We felt threatened, right? I waited for the refusal. I waited for my stepdaughter, the girl I had taught to drive, the girl I had nursed through fevers, to say no, Dad. That is a lie, Lily. Okay, I guess it was scary. I will say she was throwing things. Just please don't let her yell at me. Daniel, good girl. You are safe with me. Savannah is taking us shopping tomorrow. You need a new dress for the gala. I pushed the tablet away as if it burned me. I stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, staring out at the frozen city lights of Denver. I felt like I had been punched in the chest. She knows. I whispered to the glass. She knows it is a lie. She was there that night. I was crying because I was exhausted. I crumpled a piece of paper. I hugged her afterward. She knows, Elise said from the table. Her voice was not cruel, but it was unrelenting. But she also knows who signs the checks. Daniel offered her a narrative that was easy. He offered her money, stability, and a fun stepmom who takes her shopping instead of a stepmom who works 80 hours a week. Lily made a choice. Harper, she is afraid of him. I defended, though my voice sounded weak even to my own ears. She is bribed by him. Elise countered. There is a difference. Elise stood up and walked over to me. She stood next to me, looking at the reflection of my devastated face in the glass. This is the hard part, Elise said. The fraud is easy. The numbers are black and white. But this is where you have to decide if you are a mother or a survivor, because you cannot be both right now. I am not going to destroy her. I said I am not going to drag her into court and call her a liar on the stand. She is a child. She is a co-conspirator. Elise said, if we use these texts, we destroy her credibility. We prove she lied to protect her father. It might ruin her relationship with him. It might ruin her reputation. I don't care. I said, I am not attacking Lily. Then you are fighting with one hand tied behind your back. Elise said, Daniel will put her on the stand. He will make her cry. He will make her tell the jury that you are a monster who throws things. And if you do not impeach her testimony with these texts, the jury will believe her because juries love crying teenage girls. I looked down at the city. I saw the cars moving like red and white blood cells through the arteries of the streets. I thought about the structures I had built. I thought about how a building can only stand if the load is distributed evenly. I had carried the load for this family for 10 years. I had shielded Lily from Daniel's narcissism. I had shielded Marion from Daniel's incompetence, and in return they had conspired to label me insane. I will not proactively attack her, I said finally, turning back to Elise. I will not sue her. I will not name her as a defendant. Elise looked skeptical, but I continued, my voice hardening. I will not delete the texts. We keep them in the file. If Daniel puts her on the stand, if he forces her to lie under oath. Yes, Elise prompted. Then we show the texts. I said, if she chooses to lie, she chooses the consequences. I will not shield her from her own choices anymore. Elise nodded slowly. A flicker of respect crossed her face. Good. That is the right answer. We do not throw the first punch at the girl, but we make sure we have the block ready. She walked back to the table and tapped the screen. This changes everything, Harper. We have proof of premeditation. This proves the financial crimes were not just bad business decisions, as he will claim. They were part of a coordinated effort to remove you. It turns a white-collar crime into a personal conspiracy. Judges hate that. He wanted to make me look crazy, and I said, sitting back down. He wanted a medical record that said I was paranoid. I looked at the folder labeled Winter Collapse. Well, I said, a cold calm settling over me. He is about to find out that I am not paranoid. I am just very, very observant. Elise smiled. It was a terrifying expression. Get some sleep, Harper. Tomorrow we will draft the complaint, and then we ruin his Christmas. I looked at the tablet one last time, at the message where Lily agreed to lie for a new dress. I felt a final thin thread of maternal protection snap inside me. The foundation was gone. The family was gone. This is only the case now, and I was going to win it. The document sitting on the mahogany conference table looked like a surrender. It was thick, bound in a blue folder entitled Stipulated Settlement Agreement. To the untrained eye, it was a comprehensive defeat. Elise Ramirez had drafted it with the precision of a master forger. Under the terms of the agreement, Daniel kept the primary residence in Denver. He kept the cabin in Colorado. He kept 85% of the voting shares in Evergreen Urban Developments. I would walk away with a cash settlement that amounted to less than 5% of the company's valuation, barely enough to buy a small condo in the suburbs, and start over. It looks like I am letting him win, I said, staring at the paper. It looks like you are desperate. Elise corrected. She tapped her manicured fingernail on page 42, which is exactly what he expects. Narcissists do not look for traps when they are being fed. She flipped the page. Buried deep in the addendum sandwiched between a paragraph about carbon offset protocols and lead certification standards was a section titled Section 14B Corporate Stewardship and Ethical Compliance. It was written in the most boring, dense legalese imaginable. It spoke at length about the company's commitment to environmental protection and social responsibility. But in the middle of a sentence about upholding the highest standards of governance, there was a clause in the event that either Singhi is convicted of or pleads no contest to any felony charges related to financial fraud, embezzlement, or criminal negligence within 24 months of the execution of this agreement. All corporate assets, shares, and intellectual property rights previously held by the convicting party shall immediately revert to the non-offending party to preserve the ethical standing of the entity. He will never read this. I said, he skips the environmental sections. He thinks they are just fluff for the marketing brochures. And his lawyer is a contract attorney who specializes in divorces, not corporate compliance, Elise noted. He will look at the money. He will look at the house. He will see that you are rolling over. And he will tell Daniel to sign before you change your mind. I took a deep breath. Okay, let us go give him what he wants. I dressed for the slaughter carefully. I put on an old oversized gray sweater that had piled at the elbows. I pulled my hair back into a loose, messy ponytail. I scrubbed my face clean of makeup, letting the dark circles under my eyes stand out like bruises. I wanted to look like the woman Daniel had described to the psychiatrist, unstable, exhausted, and broken. The meeting was at Daniel's lawyer's office, a glass box in Cherry Creek that smelled of leather and intimidation. When I walked in, they were already waiting. Daniel sat at the head of the table, looking like a king in a bespoke suit. Savannah was next to him, wearing a white dress that looked suspiciously like something a bride would wear to a rehearsal dinner. And next to Savannah, avoiding my gaze, was Lily. My heart gave a painful thud. Lily was holding Savannah's hand. She looked polished, her hair blown out, wearing a diamond bracelet I had never seen before. She looked like she belonged to them now. She looked like she had chosen the winning team. Harper, Daniel said, not bothering to stand up. He gestured to the empty chair at the far end of the table. You look tired. I just want this to be over. Daniel, I whispered, keeping my eyes on the floor. I made sure my hands were trembling slightly as I pulled out the chair. We all do, Daniel sighed, looking at his watch. I have a ribbon-cutting ceremony at 4. Let us make this quick. His lawyer, a man named Greg, who had too much hair gel and a distractingly loud tie, slid the contract toward me. As discussed with MS. Ramirez, this is the final draft. We believe it is extremely generous considering the circumstances and your health issues. I flinched at the word health. It was a calculated performance, but the sting was real. Generous. Elise spoke up, her voice tight. You are leaving her with pennies on the dollar. Greg, she built that company and she is walking away with $200,000 in cash and no liability for the current debts. Greg countered, smirking. Take it or leave it. If we go to trial, we will bring up the medical records. We will bring up the incident with the blueprints. He glanced at Lily. Lily looked down at her lap, her grip on Savannah's hand tightening. I will sign, I said, my voice cracking. I don't want to go to court. I don't want Lily to have to testify. I looked at my stepdaughter. I just want you to be happy, Lily. Lily finally looked up. Her eyes were wet, but there was something else in them. Defiance, relief, the arrogance of youth that believes comfort is the same thing as love. It is for the best, Harper, Lily said softly. Dad sends this way, everyone gets a fresh start. Sick, Daniel smiled, leaning back. Even the kid gets it. You are getting a clean slate. Harper, you should be thanking me. Most men would have left you with nothing after the way you have been acting. He reached for the pen. Where do I sign? Page 45. Elise set her face a mask of professional defeat. An initial the bottom of every page. Daniel flipped through the document quickly. He glanced at the financial summary on page 3. He smirked. He checked the property division on page 10. He nodded. He reached page 42, the ESG section. My breath stopped in my lungs. The room went silent, save for the scratching of his pen. Daniel's eyes skimmed the headline. Corporate stewardship. Blar blar. Save the whales. Daniel muttered, flipping the page without reading a single word of the text. God, Harper, you and your green clauses. Even in a divorce, you are trying to save the planet. It is standard language for the brand. Daniel, I said, my voice barely a whisper, just to keep the investors happy. Fine, fine. He waved a hand dismissively. Whatever makes you feel better. He flipped to the signature page. He signed his name with a flourish. Daniel Lewis, CEO, Greg, his lawyer, was busy texting someone under the table. He did not even read the clause. He just pushed the paper toward me. I picked up the pen. My hand shook. This time for real. I was signing away my life's work. I was signing away from my home, but I was also signing his death warrant. I scrolled my name. Harper Lewis. Done, Daniel said, standing up immediately. He clapped his hands together. Well, that was painless. Savannah, babe, we can still make that lunch reservation. Savannah beamed. She looked at me with pity. I hope you find what you are looking for. Harper, maybe take a yoga class. It helps with the stress. Goodbye, Harper, Daniel said. He did not look at me. He walked out the door, followed by his entourage. Lily lingered for a second, looking at me as if she wanted to say something, then turned and followed her father. The door clicked shut. The room was silent. I slumped forward, resting my forehead on the cool wood of the table. The adrenaline crash hit me like a physical blow. I felt dizzy, nauseous, and incredibly cold. Harper, Alyssa's voice was sharp. I looked up. The tears I had been holding back were finally spilling over, but I was smiling. It was a terrifying broken smile. He signed it, I whispered. He didn't read it. He strapped himself to the electric chair, Elise said, picking up the document and sliding it into her briefcase with a snap. And he just handed us the switch. We took the elevator down to the lobby in silence. When the doors opened, the cold winter air rushed in, and for the first time in days it felt clean. What happens now? I asked. Now, Elise said, checking her watch. I file this with the court immediately. Once it is stamped, it is legally binding. And then we call Victor. We let the federal prosecutor know that we are ready to hand over the winter collapse drive. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a voicemail from Marion. I did not want to listen to it, but I needed to know the narrative. I put the phone to my ear. Harper, it's Marion. I heard you signed. Oh, thank goodness. I was telling the girls at the bridge club that it is truly a mercy. You were clearly in over your head. Dear Daniel is so generous to give you that money. Please use it to get some help. We all just want you to get well. Don't call us. Okay, let us all heal. I deleted the message. I opened Instagram. Savannah had posted a photo. It was a picture of her hand resting on Daniel's chest, a massive diamond ring on her finger. The caption read, "New chapter, official future Mrs. Lewis. Blessed love wins." I stared at the ring. It was bought with money from the Project Santa account. Money that was now evidence in a federal investigation. I walked out of the building and hailed a cab. I gave the driver the address of Victor's apartment. When I got back to the penthouse, I sat on the beige leather sofa that wasn't mine, looking out at the city that I had helped build. On the coffee table lay a copy of the agreement Elise had given me. On paper, I was a divorced, unemployed woman living on charity with $200,000 to her name and a reputation in tatters. But as I traced the signature on the document, I knew the truth. Daniel Lewis had just legally agreed to give me everything he owned the moment the handcuffs clicked around his wrists. He thought he had bought his freedom. In reality, he had just signed a confession. I went to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of tap water. I raised it to the empty apartment. "Enjoy the house, Daniel," I said to the silence. "Keep it warm for me." The trap was set. Now all I had to do was wait for Christmas. Daniel did not just steal my company. He painted it gold. 2 weeks after I signed the divorce papers, the rebranding for Evergreen Urban Developments went live. The clean sage green logo I had designed on a napkin 10 years ago, a symbol of sustainability and organic growth, was gone. In its place was a jagged stylized E rendered in metallic gold foil. It looked cheap. It looked aggressive. It looked exactly like the kind of company that would pave over a wetland to build a strip mall. They were calling the event the Christmas Charity for Green Cities Gala. It was a black tie fundraiser to be held with supreme irony at the very cabin Daniel had kicked me out of. They had hired a PR firm to blast the live stream link across every social media platform in Colorado. From the safety of Victor Hale's glass-walled conference room, I watched the promotional video. Marianne was interviewed by a local lifestyle blogger. She was standing in my kitchen wearing a sequined gown that cost more than my first car. "This year is a turning point," Marianne gushed, clutching a glass of champagne. "We are celebrating love, family, and the future. And rumor has it, my son has a very special question to ask a certain beautiful young lady tonight." She winked at the camera. I paused the video. My hand was steady on the mouse, but my stomach turned over. "He is going to propose," I said. "He is going to propose to her on Christmas Eve in front of the press at the house I renovated." Victor was sitting at the head of the table, peeling a clementine with methodical precision. "Of course he is. It is the perfect distraction. Who looks at the accounting books when there is a diamond ring on the screen? It is a theater. Arper. Bad theater, but theater nonetheless. It is going to be a massacre." I said it is. Victor agreed. He tossed a segment of fruit into his mouth, but not the kind they are expecting. We had spent the last 3 days turning the conference room into a command center. The table was covered in floor plans of the cabin, guest lists, and technical schematics. Victor had been busy in the shadows. Through a subsidiary of a subsidiary, he had quietly purchased the distressed debt that Daniel had loaded onto Evergreen's books. Technically, Victor was now Daniel's primary creditor. Daniel did not know this. He just knew that a friendly private equity firm had agreed to hold off on calling the loans until after the holidays. "The AV team is set," Victor said, sliding a folder toward me. "I hired the vendor personally. Hale Audio Visual is providing the screens, the sound system, and the lighting for the gala. Daniel thinks he got a discount because I am trying to mend fences after he beat me on the riverfront deal. He believes act." I asked, incredulous. "Narcissists always believe people want to be near them," Victor said, "even their enemies. He thinks I'm kissing the ring." I opened the folder. Inside were the access codes for the projection system. I don't need to hack in from the outside. I realized I have the front door key. "You have administrative access," Victor corrected. At 8:30 in the evening, Daniel is scheduled to play a video montage of his and Savannah's love story. It runs for 4 minutes. Then the lights go down, a spotlight hits the stage, and he proposes. 8:30, I repeated. That gives us exactly 4 minutes to swap the feed. Elise is coordinating with the United States Attorney's Office, Victor added. She sent over the final analysis of the winter collapse file this morning. The forensic accounting is airtight. The bank fraud, the bribes, the shell companies, it is all there. The prosecutor was particularly interested in forged loan documents. Are the warrants ready? They will be executed tonight, Victor said. The police and the federal agents will be waiting at the bottom of the mountain. They agreed to let the Garler start. They want to arrest him when all the suspects, Daniel, Savannah, Marion, are in one room. It saves the taxpayers the cost of a manhunt. I nodded. It was perfect. It was ruthless. But there was one loose end. I need to go out for an hour, I said, standing up. Victor looked at me sharply. Do not go near him. Harper, I am not going to him. I said, I am going to see Lily. The university campus was decorated for the holidays, but the dorms were mostly empty. Most students had gone home. Lily had stayed behind an extra day to finish a paper, or so she told her father. I parked my rental car across the street from her building. I did not get out. I just watched. 10 minutes later, Lily walked out. She was not alone. She was with 3 girls I vaguely recognized, sorority sisters she had been desperate to impress last semester. Lily looked different. She was wearing a white fur coat that looked like something Savannah would wear. She was laughing, her head thrown back, looking confident and shiny. As they passed the coffee shop window near where I was parked, I saw Lily pull something out of her purse. It was a black credit card, the Centurion card from the corporate account. I rolled down my window just an inch to hear. So, I told him college is basically a waste of time anyway, Lily was saying, her voice carrying on the cold air. Dad said I can start as a junior manager in January. Why study marketing when I'm already practically running the department? That is so cool, Lily. One of the girls squealed. Your dad is a legend. I know. Lily beamed, waving the card. Drinks are on Evergreen tonight, ladies. My hand hovered over the door handle. I had come here to save her. I had planned to intercept her, to show her the evidence, to beg her not to get on that plane to the Garler. I wanted to tell her that the junior manager position was a trap, that the credit card she was waving was evidence of embezzlement, that the father she idolized was using her as a human shield. But as I watched her swipe that card with the casual arrogance of someone who has never earned $1, I stopped. She was not the little girl I had taught to ride a bike anymore. She was 19. She had seen the way Daniel treated me. She had seen the lies. She had read the text messages asking her to perjure herself, and she had chosen the fur coat. If I got out of the car now, she would just call Daniel. She would tell him I was stalking her. She would warn him. She would retreat further into the fantasy he had built for her. Some structures cannot be fixed with a patch job. Sometimes you have to let the rot expose itself before you can rebuild. I cannot save you from the truth. Lily, I whispered to the cold glass. You have to walk into it. I rolled up the window and drove away. I left my stepdaughter to her stolen champagne. Tonight, she felt like a queen. Tomorrow, she would learn that her castle was made of cardboard. Back at the apartment, the mood was somber. The heist energy had shifted into something heavier. The quiet focus of soldiers polishing their rifles before dawn. I stood in front of the full-length mirror in the guest bedroom. I had ditched the oversized sweaters and the mom jeans. I was wearing a black jumpsuit. It was tailored, sharp, and severe. It had a plunging neckline that I would never have dared to wear in my past life as the invisible wife. But tonight, it felt like armor. I pulled my hair back into a sleek, tight knot. I applied red lipstick dark like spilled wine. I stared at myself. I tried to rehearse the speech I had written in my head. Daniel, you are a fraud. Marion, you are a hypocrite. Savannah, you are a thief. No, I shook my head. Words were weak. Daniel could twist words. He could talk over me. He could make a joke, charm the crowd, make me look hysterical again. I would not give a speech. I would not give a lecture. I would give them data. I was an architect. I dealt in facts, in load-bearing limits, in structural realities. I would show them the numbers. I would let the bank statements and the emails do the screaming for me. There was a knock on the door frame. Victor stood there. He was holding a gift box. "You look ready to bury someone," he said approvingly. "I am ready to bury a lie," I corrected. He walked over and handed me the box. I saw this in the window of a shop downstairs. I thought it might complete the ensemble. I opened the box. Inside was a scarf. It was cashmere, soft as a cloud and dyed a deep blood-red crimson. It was the color of anger. It was the color of Christmas. "Put it on," Victor said. I draped it over my shoulders. The red popped against the stark black of the jumpsuit. It looked regal. It looked dangerous. "Perfect," Victor said, a small grim smile playing on his lips. "This way. When you walk through those doors, no one will mistake you for the nanny." The comment hit me in the center of my chest, right where the wound from Christmas Eve still throbbed. "Are you the nanny?" That question had been meant to diminish me. It had been meant to reduce me to the help, to the background. But they had forgotten one thing about the help. The help has the keys. The help knows where the bodies are buried. The help knows the alarm codes. "Thank you, Victor," I said, smoothing the scarf. "The car will be here at 5 in the morning," Victor said. "The roads will be icy. Drive carefully. We need you alive for the finale." He turned to leave, then stopped. "Harper, yes. Do not show mercy," he said, "because they will not show it to you." "I know," I said. "I am fresh out of mercy." That night, I did not sleep. I sat by the window, watching the snow fall over Denver. It was coming down hard, thick white flakes that blanketed the city in silence. I pulled up the map on my phone. The route to the cabin was highlighted in blue. It was a 2-hour drive up the mountain. I closed my eyes and pictured the cabin. I knew every inch of it. I knew which floorboard creaked in the hallway. I knew the code to the back gate. I knew the password to the Wi-Fi. I reached into my bag and touched the cold metal of the Panasonic Toughbook. I touched the portable hard drive. And finally, I touched the new key card Victor had given me, the vendor access pass for the Garler. Daniel thought he had erased me. He thought that by taking my name off the deed and the bank accounts, he had removed me from existence. He was about to learn that you cannot erase the architect from the building. We are in the walls. We are in the foundation. And if we want to bring the roof down, all we have to do is pull the right pin. "Merry Christmas, Daniel," I whispered to the falling snow. "Tomorrow I will return everything you gave me. The betrayal, the humiliation, the loss. I am bringing it all back home." I turned off the light. The ghost key was ready. The stage was set. The nanny was coming home. The cabin looked less like a home and more like a jewelry box that had exploded. The rustic charm of the exposed timber and stone was suffocated under thousands of twinkling gold lights. The rebranding team had been thorough. The calming sage green of the old evergreen logo was gone, replaced by banners of aggressive metallic gold that draped from the cathedral ceilings. I stood in the shadows of the coat check room, watching through the crack in the door. I was trembling, but not from the cold. It was the vibration of a bowstring pulled taut right before release. Outside on the sprawling deck, the snow was falling in perfect fat flakes, just as the weather reports had promised. It looked like a snow globe. Daniel and Savannah were posing in front of a 20-T spruce tree, bathed in the harsh white light of a professional camera crew. The live stream was already running. I checked the view count on my phone. 40,000 people were watching the Christmas charity for Green City's Garler. 40,000 witnesses inside. The room was packed with the who's who of Colorado real estate, local politicians, and the investors Daniel was desperate to impress. Waiters circulated with trays of crystal flutes. I saw Marion. She was wearing a floor-length gold gown that clashed with her skin tone. She was holding court near the fireplace, one arm wrapped tightly around Savannah's waist as they came back inside from the cold. "Look at her," Marion practically shrieked to a group of Daniel's ads. "Is she not stunning? She is the greatest Christmas gift God has sent this family." Finally, Daniel has a partner who knows how to shine. No one mentioned me. It was as if I had never existed. Then I saw Lily. She was standing near the bar wearing a sequined silver dress that was far too mature for a 19-year-old. She was holding a glass of champagne, leaning against the counter with a practiced air of boredom. Yeah, Dad is making the announcement tonight. I heard her tell a friend from her sorority. I am going to be the youngest project director in the company's history. Dad says I have a natural instinct for it. I mean, why waste 4 years in a classroom when I'm already running things right? I felt a sharp pain in my chest, but I forced it down. She was bragging about a title that was effectively a bribe. She was proud of a job that existed within a criminal enterprise. The lights in the room dimmed. A hush fell over the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, a smooth voice announced over the speakers. Please welcome the CEO of Evergreen Urban Developments, Mr. Daniel Lewis. Spotlight swept across the room and landed on the small stage set up in front of the fireplace. Daniel jogged up the steps, looking every inch the golden boy. He flashed his $1,000,000 smile. Savannah stood just off to the side, looking adoringly at him, clutching her hands to her chest. Thank you, Daniel said, his voice rich with false humility. Tonight is about the future. It is about building a legacy that lasts. At Evergreen, we believe that a home is more than just wood and glass. It is a promise to the earth and a promise to our families. He gestured to the massive projection screen behind him. Let us take a look at our journey this year. The music swelled an inspirational orchestral track that tugged at the heartstrings. The video began to play. It was a montage of drone shots over pristine forests, happy construction workers shaking hands, and Daniel pointing at blueprints while wearing a hard hat. Then, there were clips of Savannah. Savannah walked through an unfinished frame, pointing at a wall. Savannah looking at fabric swatches. The text on the screen read, Savannah Brooks, Head of Interior Design Innovation. She had never designed anything in her life. She was an influencer who thought load-bearing was a type of exercise. The video was building to a crescendo. The music got louder. The screen showed a montage of Daniel and Savannah laughing in slow motion in the snow. I looked at my watch. It was time. Daniel reached into his pocket. I saw the outline of the velvet ring box. He took a breath, preparing to call Savannah onto the stage for the proposal that would seal his image as the family man of the year. And speaking of promises, Daniel said, turning to Savannah, there is one very special promise I want to make tonight. He went down on one knee. The crowd gasped in delight. Phones went up everywhere to capture the moment. I pressed the enter key on the remote access app on my phone. The inspirational music cut out instantly with a sharp, ugly static screech. The screen behind Daniel flickered violently. The beautiful drone footage of the forest vanished. In its place, a harsh bright white Excel spreadsheet appeared. It was blown up to massive proportions, so every row and column was visible to the back of the room. The header read, Project Center, Discretionary Fund Allocation. A murmur of confusion rippled through the crowd. Daniel froze on one knee, looking back at the screen. He blinked, clearly thinking it was a technical error. Then my voice boomed through the high-end sound system. It was a recording I had made 2 hours ago in Victor's office. Clear, calm, and terrifyingly authoritative. When we talk about Christmas gifts, perhaps we should start with the gifts Daniel has been buying for his center using the money that belongs to his employees and investors. The crowd went dead silent on the screen. The cursor moved controlled remotely by Victor's tech team. It highlighted a row. October 4th, Pay Red Ribbon Interiors LLC, amount $12,000. Memo design consultation. Next to the spreadsheet, a photo popped up. It was a screenshot from Savannah's Instagram dated October 4th. She was in a bikini holding a coconut standing on a beach in the Melds. Savannah Brooks, my recorded voice continued, owner of Red Ribbon Interiors LLC. Here we see a $12,000 consultation fee paid on the exact day she was posting from a 5-star resort in the Mulders, built to the company as essential site research. Savannah's face went white. She looked like a ghost in a wedding dress. She took a step back, her heel catching on the hem of her gown. Daniel jumped up. He waved his arms at the tech booth at the back of the room. Cut it, he screamed. Cut the feed. It is a hack. Turn it off. I looked toward the back of the room. Victor Hale was standing right next to the AV technician. The technician, who was on Victor's payroll, looked at Daniel, then looked at Victor. Victor simply crossed his arms and stared straight ahead. The technician took his hands off the console. The presentation continued. The screen flashed again, but the theft is the least of your worries, my voice said. Let us talk about safety. An email chain appeared on the screen. It was zoomed in on a message from Daniel to his site foreman, from Daniel Lewis to Mark S. Subject restructural steel grade. I don't care what the engineer specified. Switch to the grade B materials for the framing. It saves us $40,000 per unit. Once the drywall is up, no one is going to check. Just make sure the inspection report looks clean. I will handle the sign-off. A gasp went through the room. This was not just gossip. This was negligence. This was the kind of thing that made buildings collapse. Marion pushed her way through the crowd, her face twisted in panic. What is this? She shrieked, her voice cracking. Who is doing this? Stop it. You are ruining everything. It is a report. Marion, a voice said, but this time it was not a recording. The heavy oak doors at the back of the room swung open. I walked in. I was wearing a black jumpsuit that looked like a shadow cut from the night. The blood-red cashmere scarf was draped over my shoulder. The snow from outside melted on my hair, shining like diamonds under the stage lights. The room parted for me like the Red Sea. People stared. They whispered, is that the wife? I thought she was in rehab. She looks dangerous. I walked straight down the center aisle. I did not look at the guests. I looked only at the stage. It is the real report, I said, my voice projecting clearly in the stunned silence. Not the Christmas version you prepared. Daniel stared at me. His face was a mask of pure shock, followed quickly by a flush of violent rage. He hissed. You are trespassing. Get out. Security, get her out of here. I am not trespassing, I said calmly, stopping 10ft from the stage. I am the COO of this company and I am making a financial disclosure. I pointed at the screen. The image changed again. This was the killing blow. Two documents appeared side by side. On the left was the deed to the cabin signed by me 3 years ago. On the right was a loan application for $3 million from a private equity firm dated last month. The signature on the loan application was identical to the deed, exactly identical down to the pixelated artifacting of a digital copy-paste job. Forgery, I said, my voice cold. Bank fraud. $3 million taken out in my name without my knowledge while I was supposedly mentally unstable. Next to the documents, an email from Daniel appeared. It was sent to his college buddy, a broker. Don't worry about Harper signing the bridge loan. She is so busy with the layouts, she doesn't even read what I put in front of her half the time. And if she does notice, I will just tell her she signed it and forgot. She trusts me. The sound in the room shifted. It went from shock to panic. I saw the investors, the men in the expensive suits, who held the purse strings reaching for their phones. I heard the words, lawyer, audit, and pull the funding, muttered in urgent tones. Lily was standing by the bar, her hand over her mouth. Her eyes were wide, darting between the screen and her father. Dad, she whispered, but in the silence it carried. You said Mom signed that. You told me she agreed to the loan. Daniel turned on her, snapping like a cornered animal. Shut up, Lily. Don't you see what she's doing? She is crazy. She doctored these. They are not doctor. Daniel, I said. And the forensic accountants, who have been reviewing the server for the last 48 hours, agree with me. Savannah let out a small sob. She looked at the camera crew who were still filming, broadcasting her humiliation to the world. She tried to hide her face with her hands, but the diamond ring the ring bought with stolen money flashed in the light. I didn't know. Savannah stammered, looking at the crowd, desperate to salvage her own image. I thought it was legal. He told me it was a tax write-off. I have the emails. Shut up, Savannah, Marion screamed, grabbing her arm. Do not say another word. I stood there in the center of the chaos I had orchestrated. The inspirational music was long gone. The gold decorations looked tacky now, like cheap tinsel on a rotting tree. Daniel looked at me. The charm was gone. The handsome CEO mask had melted away, revealing the terrified small man underneath. You ruined it, he whispered, his voice shaking. You ruined Christmas. I looked at him and I felt absolutely nothing. No love, no hate, just the cold satisfaction of a job finished on schedule. No, Daniel, I said, I just turned on the lights. From outside, the wail of sirens began to rise, cutting through the winter wind. Blue and red lights began to flash against the windows, mixing with the gold of the party, creating a kaleidoscope of disaster. The police were here. The FBI was here. I adjusted my red scarf. "Merry Christmas," I said. "Cut his microphone," I said to the technician in the back of the room. I did not shout. I did not have to. The authority in my voice was absolute. The technician obeyed. Daniel was left shouting into a dead piece of plastic, his voice thin and pathetic in the cavernous room. I walked up the steps to the stage. I stood next to the man who had been my husband for 10 years, the man who was currently trembling with a mixture of rage and terror. I turned to face the crowd. I looked at the investors, the family members, and the camera crew that was still broadcasting this disaster to 40,000 people. Last year, right here in this living room, Daniel introduced his mistress to the family before we had even discussed a separation. I said, my voice was steady. He asked me if I was the nanny. He erased 10 years of marriage in 10 seconds. So, this year, I am just returning the favor. I am giving him the only Christmas gift he deserves, the truth. I pressed the clicker in my hand. The screen behind me changed again. The financial spreadsheets vanished. In their place appeared a series of emails. These were the emails Daniel had sent to Dr. Aries, the family psychiatrist. From Daniel Lewis to Dr. Julian Aries. Subject: Harper's mental state. We need to build a case for instability. Julian, if she fights me on the assets, I need a medical record that says she is paranoid and unfit to manage the business. Just write down that she is hearing voices. I will pay the consultation fee in cash. A ripple of shock went through the room. The whispers turned into audible gasps of disgust. This was not just business. This was evil. I clicked the button again. Now, a text message thread appeared. It was the conversation between Daniel and Lily. Daniel, when the lawyers ask, you tell them she was throwing things. You tell them you were scared. Do not mention the fact that she was just crying over the blueprints. We need a reason to avoid the prenup. Lily, but that is lying. Dad. Daniel, it is protecting your future. Lily, do you want the new car or not? In the silence that followed, a glass shattered. Everyone turned. Lily had dropped her champagne flute. It lay in shards on the hardwood floor, bubbling liquid soaking into the expensive rug. She was staring at the screen, her face drained of all color. Lily's voice was high and thin. She turned to Daniel, her eyes wide with betrayal. You said you were protecting me. You said Mom was actually dangerous. You used me. You made me lie to a judge about a car. Daniel looked at his daughter, sweat beating on his forehead. Lily, honey, don't listen to her. She doctored these. It is a deep fake. You know how technology is these days. It is not a fake. Daniel. Savannah whispered harshly. Stepping away from him, she looked at the screen, then at me. You told me she was crazy. You told me she attacked you. You said I was safe because she was the problem. She is the problem. Daniel screamed, lunging toward me. She is trying to destroy us. I did not flinch. I did not move. There is one last thing, I said, speaking over his screaming. The divorce settlement. I clicked the remote one final time. The screen displayed the dense legal text of the agreement we had signed 2 weeks ago. Section 14B was highlighted in bright yellow. In the event that either Snagey is convicted of any felony charges related to financial fraud within 24 months, all corporate assets and shares shall immediately revert to the non-offending party. You signed it, Daniel, I said, looking him dead in the eye. You were so busy counting the money you thought you stole that you didn't read the fine print. The moment the handcuffs go on your wrists, the divorce settlement is void. The house, the cabin, the company, it all comes back to me. Daniel froze. The realization hit him like a physical blow. His knees actually buckled. No, he whispered. No, that is not legal. My lawyer. Your lawyer was texting his girlfriend, I said. He missed it, but I didn't. You Daniel wrought. He dropped the microphone and rushed at me, his hands curled into claws. You liar. I will kill you. Before he could reach me, the front doors of the cabin were kicked open. Federal agents. Nobody moves. The room was instantly flooded with uniformed officers and agents in windbreakers labeled FBI. The blue and red lights from the driveway pulsed through the windows, turning the Golden Garler into a crime scene. Elise Ramirez stepped out from behind the crowd of stunned guests. She was holding a thick file folder. She walked straight to the stage, flanked by two marshals. "Daniel Lewis," Elise announced, her voice projecting like a judge's gavel. "You are under arrest for 18 counts of wire fraud, bank fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit forgery. We also have warrants for the arrest of Savannah Brooks and Marion Lewis for conspiracy and money laundering through shell entities." The room erupted into chaos. Savannah let out a scream that sounded like an animal in a trap. She scrambled backward, knocking over a tray of appetizers. "No, no," Savannah shrieked, pointing a shaking finger at Daniel. "I didn't know. He lied to me. I have emails. I kept everything. He told me it was legal tax avoidance. I will testify. I will tell you everything." The plus one had flipped in less than 10 seconds. Marion, who had been standing by the fireplace, collapsed to her knees. She looked at the officers approaching her. Then she looked at me. She started to crawl across the floor, her gold dress tangling around her legs. "Harper," she wailed, reaching out for the hem of my pants. "Harper, please. You cannot let them take me. I am an old woman. Think of the family. We are your family." I looked down at her. I looked at the woman who had eaten at my table for 10 years and then plotted to put me in a mental institution. I gently but firmly removed her hand from my leg. "What family, Marion?" I asked, my voice devoid of pity. "The family that called me the nanny. The family that tried to gaslight me into insanity. I am not your family. I am the prosecution witness." Two agents hauled Marion to her feet. She was sobbing, mascara running down her face in black streaks. I walked down the steps of the stage. I stopped in front of Lily. My stepdaughter was shaking violently. She looked small and young, the arrogant executive facade completely shattered. She looked at me, tears streaming down her face. "Mom," she choked out. "Mom, I am sorry. I didn't know. I mean, I knew, but I didn't think it was this bad. I just wanted him to be proud of me. What should I do? What do I do now?" I looked at her. Part of me wanted to hug her. Part of me wanted to tell her it would be okay, but that would be a lie, and I was done with lies. "You stop lying, Lily," I said. "That is what you do. When the officers ask you questions, you tell them the truth. No stories, no scripts. You tell them exactly what you saw. It is the only way you can survive this." I walked past her toward the door. "Harper." I turned. Daniel was being dragged out the side door by two agents. His hands were cuffed behind his back. His velvet blazer was torn. He looked wild, desperate. "You are nothing without me," he screamed, fighting against the restraints. "I made you. I built this company. You will starve without me." I stood in the open doorway. The wind swirled around me, catching the ends of my red scarf. "You forgot something, Daniel," I called back, my voice cutting through the noise of the arrest. "I am an architect. You didn't build anything. You just put your name on the door. I built this house. I built the company. And tonight, I decided to condemn it." I turned my back on him. I walked out onto the deck. The cold air hit my face, sharp and cleansing. The snow was falling heavily now, covering the driveway, covering the police cars, covering the tracks of my old life. I walked down the steps, past the stunned guests who were being ushered out by the police. I walked past Victor Hale, who was leaning against a pillar, watching the scene with a grim satisfaction. He raised his hand in a silent salute. I nodded. I kept walking until I reached my rental car. I did not look back at the cabin. I did not look back at the ruin of the Lewis family. The nightmare was over. The structure had been demolished. The site was cleared. Now I could finally build something of my own. Thank you so much for listening to this story of betrayal and justice. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Are you listening from your car, your kitchen, or maybe winding down for the night? Please leave a comment below to share your thoughts and let's chat. Don't forget to subscribe to the Azad Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and smash that hype button to help this story reach even more people who need to see Calmer in action. Stay strong.